We've been involved in church our whole married life. We have never been out of church. I mean, there's been times when it's been very difficult for us to do that, but we've always stayed very involved, very active in the church.
I grew up Catholic and you grew up non-denominational, and we would, attend each other's churches, but we didn't really have a home of our own. And we would just clash. I mean, we could not come to an agreement.
Especially when it came to, well, what are we going to do when we have kids?
We got in a fight one day about me taking the children to church, and so I was like, well, then come to church. And so he decided to come to church.
Every day, you lift each other up in prayer and you just bathe your marriage in prayer.
It's good to have you here this morning. It's good to see you here. Man, so has everybody had a pretty good week? Pretty decent week? Not too bad? Okay. And like I said earlier, even if there's been surprises, you've got a God that loves you, a God that wants to move in your life. And so let's trust. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about that this morning. We're kicking off a brand new series called From This Day Forward. And let me just say this before we dive into the message. Christine had mentioned our Valentine's dinner. First pay, first serve, because it's limited. But I do want to mention that it's not just for married couples; it's also for engaged couples. If you are engaged, also if you're in a serious relationship and you want to come out for the Valentine's dinner, again you can register this morning. But we don't have, or your registration isn't complete unless we have your payment, because again the space is limited on that. So make sure you pay. It's $35. You can't beat that. It's a great restaurant. We're gonna have a great time, and so you don't want to miss it. So we're kicking off this series called From This Day Forward. From this day forward, we're going to be talking about 5 commitments to fail-proof your marriage. Now, maybe you're here this morning, you're like, man, I'm not married, okay? And so this series isn't for me. Well, if you can answer yes to any of these other questions, not just being married, but if you can answer yes to if you're engaged, then this series is for you. If you're in a serious relationship, this series is for you. If you're single right now, but you want to be married, you look forward to getting married one day, this series is for you. If you're divorced, but you want to get married again, you want to get married another time, this series is for you. And so if you're here this morning, you fall in any of those counts, this series is for you if you answered yes to any of those, which is probably a good majority of us. Maybe there's a few of us that we really don't care to be married, and that's great. But here's the other thing about that is even if you don't want to be married, you have no desire at all whatsoever to be married or to be in a serious relationship, well, listen to this series for somebody else. For another married couple or somebody else that's in a serious relationship. Now, before or as we get started, how many of you are married? Lift your hands, Those of you that are married, awesome, married couples. Cool. All right, how many of you are single, want to get married one day? Single people want to get married one day? All right, single people, keep your hand up. Single people want to get married one day. Look around, scan the audience, because your future mate might just be in this room. You can meet them this morning. And I just want you to know that if you do get together and that you do marry, you need to name your son Josh, because I was the one that hooked you up. If it's a daughter, you can name her Joshina, because I hooked you up. All right? Just so you know. So, but those of you that are married, those of you that are single, again, we want to talk about from this day forward, we want to look at some things, 5 commitments over the next couple of weeks that we're going to look at that will fail-proof our marriage. Because here's the thing, and let me back up for just a second, because I want to throw these commitments out there we're going to be talking about. Here's where we're going. We're going to be talking about seeking God. That's the first commitment. We're going to be talking about fighting fair. We're going to talk about having fun. It should be fun. Our marriage should be fun. It shouldn't be something we dread. We're going to talk about staying pure. That's going to be another commitment that we're talking about. And then the 5th commitment we're going to be talking about, the 5th week of this series, we're going to be talking about never giving up. So seeking God, fighting fair, having fun, staying pure, and never giving up. That's where we're going for the next couple of weeks. Now, here's a statistic, and I'm going to share a few of these, but here's a statistic that maybe you don't know. 88% of American men and women between the ages of 20 and 29 believe that they have a soulmate who is waiting for them. Now, that's exciting, right? I mean, every single, most people in that 20 to 29 range, but I mean, this is really most of humanity. I mean, they believe that, hey, I've got a soulmate that's out there. I've got somebody out there that is my soulmate. I got somebody out there that is the one for me. And we've probably heard this before, that to be fulfilled in life, you've got to find the one, all right? We've heard that. Like, you really got to find the one. If you want to be fulfilled in life, you got to find the one. And we're going to come back to the one in just a few moments, so hang on to that. But the reality is that there are people all over the earth. There are people in this city, all over this city, all over our state, our nation, and around the world, that they believe that there is a soulmate out there for them. There is somebody that is for them. In fact, girls, I mean, you knew this at a very early age as a little girl. You know, you were already wearing the princess outfits and the queen outfits, and you were just getting all dolled up. Maybe you were even in the pageants at a very early age, which you know, toddlers and tiaras. I mean, I don't know about that show. But anyways, you know, maybe you were one of those girls, and you were already thinking about your Prince Charming back then. You were already thinking about your knight in shining armor that would save you, that would slay the dragon, and that would save you and bring you into his kingdom, and everything would just be happily ever after. And guys, I mean, we were kind of slow at this. Anybody remember the picture? It's like an older picture. There's one that's really popular. I tried to find it but couldn't. But the picture where there is a girl that is a very young girl and boy that is laying a nice passionate kiss on his cheek, and she's just, you know, showing love to him, got her arm wrapped around him, and he's got this face of disgust. Like, oh my gosh, cooties, you know, cooties. Oh, get away. And guys, we were slow at this, you know. We didn't, back then, we were just like, we didn't want to be around girls. We didn't want to hug girls, and we didn't want to, like, you know, girls kissing on us. I mean, girls were the enemy, you know. They got cooties, and we didn't want girls touching us. And you probably played the game. You remember the childhood game in the schoolyard there. Boys chase girls, right? You know, or girls chase boys, but guys, we were kind of slow at this. And then as we grew up, we were like, oh, I didn't know. You can kiss me now. I'll accept it. I'll receive it, right? We were a little slow. But ladies, we caught up. You know, we're a little slow, but we caught up. We're there. But the fact of the matter is, most people are walking around and they're saying, there's somebody that is out there for me. Now, I want to share a couple not so good statistics, because I want us to see something here. Notice this: 60% of marriages for couples between the ages of 20 and 25 end in divorce. So if you fall into the age of 20 to 25, 60% of those marriages end in divorce. Well, I mean, if you're within that age, if you're 25, let me just encourage you: wait till you're 26 to get married. You know, if you're 19 and you've only been dating a month, get married now. Do it. But this is, I mean, while I'm having fun with this a little bit, this is actually very serious. I mean, 60% of marriages, of people that fall into that age range of 20 to 25, they're ending in divorce. Why is that, you know? Look at this: 50%, you probably heard this before, 1 and 2 marriages, 50% of first marriages, 67% of second, and 74% of third marriages end in divorce. So here's what we think, right? Here's what our culture thinks. Our culture says, well, you know what? I married the wrong one. I thought that this person was my soulmate. I thought that this person was the one that I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with. But you know what? That person is a total jerk. That person is a just total control freak. That person, it's just not going to work out with them. I need to find my soulmate. This is the person I was supposed to marry. Well, guess what? Second marriages don't end up as well. It's actually worse. 67%, 74%. So now, I don't know about you, but I'm wondering, and I'm married. Christine and I, we're going to celebrate 16 years coming next month. Woo woo, you know. And let me just say this. I mean, 16 years haven't been perfect. I mean, I am perfect, but I mean, I'm married to an imperfect woman, man. 16 years And it hasn't always been fun. It hasn't always been easy. I've got my faults. She has her faults. We've failed each other at times. We haven't always loved each other the way that we're supposed to, and all of those things. But here we are 16 years, and I'm looking at this statistic, and I'm saying, man, this could be me. 1 in 2 marriages end in divorce. I mean, this could be me just because I'm married 16 years. I mean, it's the norm, isn't it, that we see on the news people that have been married, famous people that have been married 20, 25 years, and they get a divorce. And it's like, how do you get a divorce after 20, 25 years? After being together for so long, how is it that we're getting a divorce? But here's the other thing that concerns me. The other thing that concerns me about this is, I mean, man, does marriage... Do we need to just throw the idea of marriage out? I mean, if you have 60% that fall into that age range of 20 to 25, and 60% of those marriages are ending in divorce, and then you look at something like this and you're saying, and it's 50% of all marriages, and second-time marriages aren't any better, third-time marriages aren't any better, do we throw out the idea of marriage? Now, here's what our culture also feeds us, and here's what we also we've probably heard over and over, because people see these statistics and they're just like, hey, 1 in 2 marriages are ending in divorce. You know what? I'm just not going to get married. We'll just have a serious relationship, and we'll just live with each other. We'll just live together, or we'll just cohabitate. Notice this. Research indicates that people who live together prior to getting married are more likely to have marriages that end in divorce. Isn't that crazy? I mean, we just think the answer is, hey, don't get married. We'll just live together. That's the answer, because marriage doesn't work, so let's just live together, and that's got to be better, right? Wrong. Here's another one. A recent study on cohabitation concluded that after 5 to 7 years, only 21% of unmarried couples were still living together. So is living together the answer? I mean, do we throw marriage out? Do we say, all right, well, let's trade living together for marriage, when living together, I mean, 21% after 5 to 7 years, they're not even together any longer. So what's the problem? Like, what's the issue? What's going on here? Why is it that we have all of these marriages ending in divorce, and why is it that even the idea of living together? Now, let me just say this. My reasoning for sharing these statistics are for us to just to think through some of these things. I am not trying to offend you in any way. If you're living with somebody, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm not trying to condemn you or anything along those lines. But I want us to think about some things. I want to just give us some food for thought and maybe consider some things that maybe we haven't considered before. Now, going back to as far as divorce, notice this. Children of divorce have a higher risk of divorce when they marry, and an even higher risk if the person they marry comes from a divorced home. So that person already has a higher risk if their parents got divorced, and if they marry somebody that their parents were divorced, it's even a higher risk of divorce. And so it's kind of this snowball effect, that what mom and dad did or what our parents did, that if they ended up getting a divorce, the chance of us getting a divorce is very high. Notice this. Statistics show that due to the lack of stability and support in the home, children from divorced parents experience significant decrease in academic success, physical health, and future stability in their own relationships. See, so it's this downward spiral that, it doesn't just affect that man and that woman, but if they have children, it plays a part in their lives that I'm sure that most men and women, most husbands and wives, that they don't even really consider before getting a divorce, that they don't really take to heart before getting a divorce. So here's the thing. It's like we look at these statistics and it's just like, man, you know what? It's better to be single. And yeah, I mean, in many ways, it is actually better to be single. But we look at this and we're just saying, for those of us that are married, we're saying, man, there's no hope. There's no hope for us. And for those of us that are considering marriage, we're thinking about, oh, maybe I need to unconsider it. Maybe I don't need to get married. I mean, if this is what's happening, if this is what's going on. So maybe the question that you have Whether you're married or you're not, you want to be married one day. Whether you're married or you want to be married someday, maybe the question that you're wondering is an incredible marriage actually possible? And emphatically, I want to say, yes, it is. An awesome marriage is absolutely possible. But here's the thing. It's not possible if we're doing things the way our culture says to do things. It's not possible if we're establishing and we're adopting the ideas of what our culture is feeding us, and the way that our culture says that love is just an emotion, and love isn't an emotion. Love is sacrificial. It's action. It's unconditional. And so we have this idea that, well, love is an emotion, and so if I fall out of love with my soulmate, with my partner, with the person that I'm married to, well, then I guess it's time for us to separate. But love is not an emotion, and we throw around these ideas of, well, you know, we just don't have feelings for each other. We just don't have those feelings for each other anymore. Marriage has nothing to do with feelings. You may feel like, listen, sometimes I feel like being married to her, and sometimes she feels like being married to me, and sometimes we don't. You know, because in the moment, I may be upset about something, I may be frustrated about something, I may be thinking about something, and then if I'm being true to my feelings, it's like, I'm just like, man, you know, why does she have to do that? Why does she have to be like that? Man, this stinks. But I'm not going by my feelings. My feelings aren't what dictates or demonstrates to me whether I should stay in my marriage or not. It's something much more bigger than that. It's something much more firm than that. So if we're relying on our feelings to tell us whether we should stay married or not, we're relying on the wrong thing. If we're relying on love just being a feeling, just being an emotion, to dictate to us whether we should stay married or not, or get married or not, we're relying on the wrong thing. An incredible marriage is absolutely possible. But it's only possible if we change our mindset. It's only possible if we establish something new. If we're not doing what everybody else is doing. And in reality, I mean, that's what really God is about. See, God has the very best life in store for us, and everything in between, everything that encompasses that life. God has the very best for us. But what that means a lot of times, it means to think differently than everybody else thinks. It means to do differently than what everybody else does. And so what we think is we just say, well, here's what everybody else is doing, here's what everybody else is doing. Well, here's what everybody else is doing in marriage, right? And 50% of marriages, all marriages, are ending in divorce. Here's what everybody else is doing. See, I believe we can have an incredible marriage, but if we're going to have an incredible marriage, we've got to do something different than what everybody else is doing. Now, you've probably had, maybe you shared vows if you're married. Maybe you shared vows similar to these, or you've probably seen this on one of those romance movies, or maybe the Hallmark movie. And let me just confess, I've been watching a lot of Hallmark movies lately because I sacrifice for my wife, because I love her unconditionally. I love her sacrificially, so I'm willing to watch Hallmark movies from time to time. But you've probably heard vows like this. I, Josh, take you, Christine, as my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, there's the title of our series, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death do us part, so help me God. I mean, we've probably heard something like that before. Maybe you've shared vows similar to those before. Now, here's the thing that I wonder is, what happened to our commitment? Like, what happened to those vows that we looked in each other's eyes, and in our eyes we were glowing, and there's a tear coming down, and we made the commitment. We shared our vows, and we committed to each other for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health. And then what happened? What happened when things went from good to worse, when things went from richer to poorer, and we just kind of lost our commitment? Like, what happened when the toilet seat kept being left open, left up, and we're just like, oh, geez, and that's pretty much most of you ladies. I can't believe he does this, This is divorce material. You can't do this. Or ladies, you're probably notorious for this. I know my wife is, leaving your clothes all over the place. And actually, she leaves it on her bureau. In fact, this morning I should have taken a picture because she's got this mound on her bureau of clothes that are just sitting there. That's divorce material, But what happens is things that we didn't expect, things that didn't come to fruition the way that we desired, the way that we expected when we shared those vows with each other and we said for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health. And then when those things actually happen, when those kind of the sickness happens or the worst happens or the poorer aspect happens, we're ready to throw in the towel. We're ready to give up. We forget the commitment that we made to each other. And the reason we forget that commitment is, the reason we lack commitment to each other is because we lack commitment to God. We lack that commitment to God. In fact, there's another statistic that says the rate of satisfaction in marriage is higher for husbands and wives when both regularly attend or regularly maintain religious attendance and feel that God is the center of their marriage. There you go. And now notice the statistic, this stat is very clear. It says when both husband and wife, when they're both regularly attending church, when they've made that a part of their lives and they made God a part of their life and God is the center of their marriage, they are satisfied in their marriage. See, the reason why we forget our commitment, the reason why we forget our vows, the reason why those things just come to nothing when in a sense, life hits and we get to really see the other person and who they are and what they do and what they're like that we didn't see before. And the reason why we're getting ready to give up is because we've either given up on God or because we've never had any relationship with God, who's got the very best, again, in store for us. Now, I want to go back to the end of those vows where it says, so help me God. Because we've heard this many times before. We've heard it in the courtroom. I swear that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. In other words, so help me God if I don't fulfill my oath. That's what the phrase means. It's a phrase that we use to give an oath. And so we're essentially saying, so help me God if I don't tell the truth. So help me God if I'm not speaking the truth. We've heard it in the presidential inauguration. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States. So help me God. So help me God. Now, here's the thing that I want us to look at this morning. Because again, this phrase, so help me God, we use it as a phrase for, again, so help me God if I don't fulfill my oath. Like, God's going to come after me. God's going to get me if I don't fulfill my promise, what I said. But you know what I think that we should, especially as it relates to our relationships and especially as it relates to marriage, I think that this phrase should actually be a proclamation of desperation of how much we need God in our lives. Like instead of, so help me God, it should be, so help me God. Like, God, I'm getting ready to get married. I need your help. And God, I'm getting ready to start a new career. I really need your help. God, I'm getting ready to just kind of put my finances, I'm getting ready to invest. I'm getting ready to make a purchase. God, I need your help. God, I'm getting ready to choose a school that I'm going to go to, that I'm going to get my degree in. God, I need your help. Instead of a proclamation of making an oath that we're going to be true to what we said we're going to do, or that we're going to speak the truth, what if, especially as we're talking about relationships, what if, as we're talking about marriages, what if we said, God, I need your help? Because honestly, friends, for your marriage, for my marriage, for your future marriage to make it, for your relationship to make it, you got to have God in the center of it. Here's what Jesus said. Luke 12:31, Jesus said, seek the kingdom of God above all else, and he will give you everything you need. Notice what Jesus says. Seek the kingdom of God above everything else. You mean above marriage, Jesus? Yes. You mean above my career, Jesus? Yes. You mean above my finances, Jesus? Yes. You mean above, absolutely everything, Jesus? Yes. Seek the kingdom of God above everything else. Seek his kingdom, and everything you need, he's going to give you. See, you're God, the creator of everything, the one who loves you way beyond anybody else, any other organization, your boss, your family, anybody else, the one who loves you, the one who created you. He has the very best in store for you. But the only way that he could bring that into your life, and the only way that he could bring that into my life, is if we are acknowledging him in our lives. It's if we are trusting him with our lives. Because we could have this mental assent of, okay, God, yep, I know you're out there. You got my back. All right, God, I'm going to go live my life now, but I know you're there. You got my back. And we just think that God's going to bless that, and he can't. He won't. See, God's got knowledge that you don't have, that I don't have, that he wants to give us. He's got understanding and wisdom. He's got truth that we don't have, that he wants to give us. That if all we do is have that mental assent, guess what we're going to do? We're going to get swept up with culture. We're going to get swept up with what everybody else believes. We're going to get swept up with what everybody else is doing, and we're going to be those terrifying and those, disturbing statistics because we just do what everybody else does. And here's a mistake that we make. We make the mistake of saying, well, that's them. That won't happen to me. Or that won't happen to me. I wish I had a quarter for every single person that said that. Or I got a quarter for every single person that said that. And it ended up exactly happening to them. Because I would be a rich man. Because it seems like everybody says that. Everybody says, oh, well, that was them, but it won't happen to me. It won't happen to me. I could drink and I can get drunk and I can get behind the wheel and I won't get into an accident on the way home. It won't happen to me. I wonder how many men and women had said that, believed that, trusted in that. And they ended up getting in an accident and either killing themselves, probably killing somebody else, or if they lived, they killed somebody else and now they're in prison for the rest of their life. And it's the same thing. Like we just think, well, I won't be one of the 50% that don't make it. Well, you will. You will. If you don't have something more firm than your feelings and your emotions, what you want, your expectations, you will. If you don't have something more firm, if you don't have a better foundation than just you and the other person, than just me and my wife, if all I have is my foundation that I could set up, and all she has is the foundation that she could set up, and we bring that into our marriage, we're not going to make it for the next 16 years. I know. I look back at my marriage, and I see the many mistakes that I've made and the many reasons that if I did not have God in the center of my marriage, of our relationship, then we wouldn't have made it past probably year 5, probably year 10, maybe even year 15. And so Jesus says, seek the kingdom. Now here's the interesting about seeking, right? We seek things that are important to us. Like if we lose our keys, we're seeking all over for our keys. Where's my keys? Where's my keys? I've got to drive to work. I got to get to work. I got to get somewhere. Or we lose our phone, we're just seeking all over for our phone. Seeking all over. Why? Because we want to make sure that not only do we have our keys, but that we also have our phone so we can take our selfies throughout the day so we can post them on Facebook. We need our phone. I got to find my phone. So we seek for those things that are so important to us. We seek for the name tag, right? Our work name tag, because if we don't have our work name tag, man, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to get written up, and that's not good. We don't want that. And so we seek for those things. We search for those things that are so important to us. And the reason we're not seeking after God is because he's just not that important to us. The reason why a lot of people don't seek after God is because he's just not that important to them as much as their keys are. I remember a lady here at our church was sharing with Christine just how she was searching all over for her phone. She couldn't find her phone anywhere. She's tearing up her house, going everywhere throughout her house and just tearing it inside and out and trying to find her phone, only to realize that it was in her hand the whole time. It was sitting right there in her hand, and she's looking all over the place for her phone. It was right there in her hand. And sometimes the very thing that we need to seek is right there in front of us. And that's God, friends. That's God is the very one that you and I need. So what's even the result of putting God first? Like, what's the result of putting God first in our relationship? What's the result of putting God first in our marriage? What's the result of just in life itself of putting God first? Because Jesus said, seek God above everything else, and all these things will be added to you. All these things will be taken care of. Jesus reminds us of an Old Testament, what Moses wrote in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your mind, to love God. But what's the result of that? Like, what's the benefit of that? To seek God first, to put God first. Well, I want to quickly, for the last couple minutes, I want to quickly go back to a guy by the name of Solomon. Solomon was a king of Israel. His father was a very famous, Solomon was very famous as well, but his father was very famous as well. You may know him. His name is David. He's the one that killed Goliath, and David was a great king. In fact, God said of David that he was a man after his own heart. And Solomon is David's son. And I want to just go back to Solomon for just a few moments, because there's some things that Solomon has that if we have those things as well, we reap the benefits just like Solomon. And so let's go back to 1 Kings chapter 3. And Kings and Chronicles, like 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles and 2 Chronicles, are basically records of the kings of Israel. And so this is what was said about Solomon. Solomon loved the Lord and followed all the decrees of his father David. Solomon loved God. So it's fair to say that Solomon knew what Moses wrote way back in hundreds of years back, where he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That Solomon knew that. And it's safe to say that because Solomon loved God, that Solomon trusted God, that Solomon obeyed God, that Solomon followed God. And we'll see this very clearly because we'll see God's response to it. But Solomon loved the Lord, but not only that, but Solomon also followed all the decrees of his father David. In other words, everything that his father passed down to him, Solomon learned. And Solomon took hold of those things. Every characteristic, every attribute, every good thing that Solomon saw in his father David, he followed. He followed everything that was passed down to him. Now let me just pause there for just a second. Maybe you don't have a father that's been in your life. Maybe you don't have a mother that's been in your life. Maybe you don't have that father or that mother that has been able to pass something down to you, that's been able to pass some good traits and good qualities down to you. Here's what I would encourage you to do. Find somebody that's a little older than you. Could be an aunt, could be an uncle, could be an older friend, could be your boss. Find somebody that, especially as we're talking about marriage, especially somebody that is married that has a great relationship, find somebody that you can learn from. Find somebody that you can glean from, that you can get some of these, that you can emulate and you can follow. But notice, Solomon not only loved God, but he also followed what his daddy taught him. Now that night, verse 5, that night the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream, and God said, what do you want? Ask, and I will give it to you. I mean, how would you love for God to appear to you in a dream and say, what do you want? Ask anything, and I'll give it to you. Man, like, sign me up. Sign me up for one of those dreams. God, I'm there. I'm going to go to sleep tonight. I'm expecting God to show up. Here's the thing, friends. Why can't it happen to you? Why can't it happen to me? Why can't God appear to us and say, what do you want? Ask whatever it is that you want, and I'll give it to you. But notice what Solomon had. Solomon loved God. Solomon trusted. Solomon put God first. Solomon obeyed God, and God said, what is it that you want? I'll give you anything. Now here's what Solomon asks for. Verse 7. Now, O Lord, Solomon replies, now, O Lord, my God, you have made me king instead of my father David. But I am like a little child who doesn't know his way around. In other words, Solomon, translation, so help me God. Help me God. I don't know my way around. In fact, Solomon's at a very young age as king, probably around teenage years. Here's Solomon. Those of you that are teenagers, hey, who says you can't be president of the United States? Anyways, so Solomon is at a young age, and he's just like, I know nothing. I don't know my way around. God, I need your help. I need you to help me. And so he says, but I'm like a little child who doesn't know his way around. And here I am in the midst of your own chosen people, a nation so great and numerous that cannot be counted. Give me an understanding heart, Solomon says. Give me the ability to understand what to do. Give me an understanding heart so that I could govern your people well and know the difference between right and wrong. So God responds to him, verse 12. I will give you what you ask for. I will give you a wise and understanding heart. Now notice, God one-ups him. God says, I'm not just going to give you the ability to understand what to do, but I'm going to give you the ability to know how to do it. Wisdom. Friends, Paul says this. Paul writes this in the New Testament. He says, knowledge just puffs us up. Knowledge just gives us the big head. You know, we could spout out knowledge. I know all this stuff. But wisdom is what we need to be able to take that knowledge, to be able to know what we understand or understand what we know, and to be able to take it now and apply it to our lives, to know what to do with it. And so God tells Solomon, he says, Solomon, you ask for understanding, and that's great. But you know what? I'm going to one-up you, and I'm going to give you wisdom as well. So notice he says, I will give you a wise and understanding heart because, Solomon, you love me. You trust me. You obey me. You put me first. I'm going to give you a wise and understanding heart, such as no one has had or ever will have. Notice. And I will also give, God one-ups it again, and I will also give what you did not ask for, riches and fame. He didn't even ask for that. And God says, because you love me, Solomon, with your heart, your soul, your mind, and strength, I'm going to give you a wise and understanding heart. And I'm going to even give you some stuff you didn't ask for. I'm going to give you fame and fortune. No other king in all the world will be compared to you for the rest of your life. And if you follow me and obey my decrees, so in other words, God's saying, if you continue doing what you've been doing, Solomon, if you follow me, obey my decrees and my commands, as your father David did, your father who passed down some good things to you, just as he did, I will give you a long life. Now, I don't know about you, but again, sign me up. That's what I want. And if we want that, friends, then we've got to put him first. That's the only way that it's going to happen. And in conclusion, that's the only way that really our marriage is going to make it. The marriage that you desire to have one day, single people, the way that it's going to come to fruition is because you have put him first and you're running. And sooner or later, you see somebody else that's running alongside of you and they've put him first too. And you know, you're just focused on running because you're focused on God. And then you notice that there's a kind of catch on your, to the side there that somebody's running with you. And you look over and you're like, he's kind of cute. You look over and she's kind of cute. And they're running and they're following God just like you are. And that's the only way, friends, that we're going to have the very best and make it with our marriages, in our relationships. From this day forward, let's seek God. If we're married, yeah, maybe we haven't been up to this point. From this day forward. If you're single, maybe you haven't been seeking God up to this point in your life. Maybe you've wanted nothing to do with God. How about from this day forward? Because if we want something different, than what everybody else has and what's happening in our culture, we've got to do something different. We've got to tweak some things. We've got to change our mindset. We've got to live a little differently. Incredible blessing is reserved for those who put God first. Understanding and wisdom is reserved for those who put God first. Incredible blessing. See, God blesses every single person on the face of this earth has a level of God's blessing. It says that his rain falls on the just and the unjust. Speaking of God's goodness, God's grace, everybody on the face of this earth, whether they believe in God or not, they reap a certain measure of God's blessing. But incredible blessing is reserved for those that put him first. Because in reality, to be fulfilled, yes, you've got to find the one. But the one is God. It's not a person. Actually, your spouse is your two, or that special someone, that soulmate is your two. God should be your one, putting him first. So the question that I want to ask us this morning, from this day forward, how will I put God first in my relationship? And let me just share a couple things. This series is based off of actually Craig and Amy Groshel's book, From This Day Forward. They wrote a book on marriage, on relationships, and Craig is the lead pastor of Life Church in Oklahoma. They've got multi-sites. It's a fairly large church. We've got those books this morning. Maybe that's your next step. Maybe whether you're married or not, you need to get that book and you need to dive into it, because it goes through each one of these commitments and dives in even a little deeper. Maybe your next step from this day forward, you're going to see God. Maybe your next step is that you're going to get a devotional. If you don't have the Bible app, the YouVersion Bible app, get that. It has some awesome reading plans in there. And one of those is From This Day Forward. You could search From This Day Forward, and there's actually 2 devotionals. One of them is a 7-day, and the other one's a 33-day devotional. And it goes through, again, the seeking God and fighting fair and having fun, staying pure, and not giving up. We've got to do something different. And I think one of the things that maybe we could do different, that maybe, and Craig talks about this, having a keystone habit, because there are habits that we do that build momentum for other habits. And I think like one of those habits in a relationship and in a marriage that so often is not done, but could be a very keystone habit that will help you to, go to church on a regular basis, put God first, spend time in his word, join up in a connection group. And speaking of a connection group, we're going to have a From This Day Forward connection group that's going to start the week right after, or the Tuesday right after the Valentine's dinner. We're going to hit this thing from all angles. You know why? Because we believe in marriage. And we believe that God has an awesome marriage in store for you. And we want to give you the tools to be able to have that if that's what you want. Because we've got to do something different. And so I just encourage us, and maybe that keystone habit could be prayer. And maybe you just never done. If you're dating somebody right now, if you're married, can you just grab the hand of your special someone? Maybe you've never prayed with each other before. All right, and I know it's kind of like awkward, and it's kind of like, it's a little bit embarrassing, and it's like, what do I say? Don't worry. I'm gonna pray, and all I want you to do is repeat after me, okay? Just grab the hand of your spouse right there next to you, and just repeat this prayer after me. Maybe this is the first time you've ever prayed together, and maybe you could build on this. Just repeat this prayer after me. God, right now, I come to you, and I thank you that you have the very best for me, and that you have the very best in store for my relationship. And God, we want to put you first in our lives. And Lord, we just ask you to fill us up with knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, that you would give us your direction, that you would show us, God, how to put you first in our relationship, how to put you first in our marriage. God, we want you to be the center of our relationship. We thank you for your blessing upon us. We thank you for your goodness in our lives. We give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Yeah, let's give him praise this morning.